Hello, sleepy friends. Welcome to Relax for a While. I'm Joanne, and I'm so glad you're here. Tonight I'll be sharing 3 gentle sleep stories, a peaceful collection of bedtime stories for grown-ups designed to help you unwind and drift off to sleep. We'll begin with a lovely fairy tale called Felicia and the Pot of Pinks. It's a story of a kind and gentle girl who finds a touch of magic in a humble pot of flowers. This story is filled with love, grace, and quiet wonder, a perfect way to begin your journey into rest. If you find comfort here, I'd love for you to like, subscribe, or even share this video with someone who could use a little rest. It really helps the channel grow and reach others who may need this quiet space too. Now, let's take a moment to settle in together. Close your eyes if you wish. Take a deep breath in and slowly exhale. Let the tension of the day melt away. Now imagine a soft night sky above you, stars twinkling gently. A warm light glows from a cozy little cottage in the distance. And you feel safe. You feel calm. And all you need to do now is rest. Now, when you're ready, let's begin with the gentle sleep story, Felicia and the Pot of Pinks. Lights out. Once upon a time, there was a poor laborer who, feeling that he had not much longer to live, wished to divide his possessions between his son and daughter whom he loved dearly. So he called to them and said, "Your mother brought me as her dowry 2 stools and a straw bed. I have besides a hen, a pot of pinks, and a silver ring, which were given to me by a noble lady who once lodged in my poor cottage. When she went away, she said to me, 'Be careful of my gifts, good man. See that you do not lose the ring or forget to water the pinks. As for your daughter, I promise you that she shall be more beautiful than anyone you ever saw in your life. Call her Felicia, and when she grows up, give her the ring and the pot of pinks to console her for her poverty. Take them both then, my dear child,' he added, 'and your brother shall have everything else.' The 2 children seemed quite contented, and when their father died, they wept for him and divided his possessions as he had told them. Felicia believed that her brother loved her, but when she sat down upon one of the stools, he said angrily, 'Keep your pot of pinks and your ring, but let my things alone. I like order in my house.' Felicia, who was very gentle, said nothing, but stood up crying quietly, while Bruno, for that was her brother's name, sat comfortably by the fire. Presently, when supper time came, Bruno had a delicious egg, and he threw the shell to Felicia, saying, 'There, that is all I can give you. If you don't like it, go out and catch frogs. There are plenty of them in the marsh close by.' Felicia did not answer, but she cried more bitterly than ever and went away to her own little room. She found it filled with sweet scent of the pinks, and going up to them she said sadly, 'Beautiful pinks, you are so sweet and so pretty, you are the only comfort I have left. Be very sure that I will take care of you and water you well, and never allow any cruel hand to tear you from your stems." As she leaned over them, she noticed that they were very dry. So taking her pitcher, she ran off in the clear moonlight to the fountain, which was at some distance. When she reached it, she sat down upon the brink to rest, but she had hardly done so when she saw a stately lady coming toward her, surrounded by a number of attendants. 6 maids of honor carried her train, and she leaned upon the arm of another. When they came near the fountain, a canopy was spread for her, under which was placed a sofa of gold of cloth, and presently a dainty supper was served upon a table covered with dishes of gold and crystal, while the wind in the trees and the falling water of the fountain murmured the softest music. Felicia was hidden in the shade, too much astonished by all she saw to venture to move. But in a few moments the queen said, "I fancy I see a shepherdess near that tree. Bid her come hither." So Felicia came forward and saluted the queen timidly, but with so much grace that all were surprised. "What are you doing here, my pretty child?" asked the queen. "Are you not afraid of robbers?" "Ah, madame," said Felicia, "a poor shepherdess who has nothing to lose does not fear robbers." "You are not very rich then," said the queen, smiling. "I am so poor," answered Felicia, "that a pot of pinks and a silver ring are my only possessions in the world." "But you have a heart," said the queen. "What should you say if anybody wanted to steal that?" "I do not know what it is like to lose one's heart, madame," she replied, "but I have always heard that without a heart one cannot live, and if it is broken, one must die. And in spite of my poverty, I should be sorry not to live." "You are quite right to take care of your heart, pretty one," said the queen. "But tell me, have you supped?" "No, madam," answered Felicia. "My brother ate all the supper there was." Then the queen ordered that a place should be made for her at the table, and herself loaded Felicia's plate with good things, but she was too much astonished to be hungry. "I want to know what you were doing at the fountain so late," said the queen presently. "I came to fetch a pitcher of water for my pinks, madame," she answered, stooping to pick up the pitcher which stood beside her. But when she showed it to the queen, she was amazed to see that it had turned to gold, all sparkling with great diamonds, and the water, of which it was full, was more fragrant than the sweetest roses. She was afraid to take it until the queen said, "It's yours, Felicia. Go and water your pinks with it, and let it remind you that the queen of the woods is your friend." The shepherdess threw herself at the queen's feet and thanked her humbly for her gracious words. "Ah, madame," she cried, "if I might beg you to stay here a moment, I would run and fetch my pot of pinks for you. They could not fall into better hands." "Go, Felicia," said the queen, stroking her cheek softly. "I will wait here until you come back." So Felicia took up her pitcher and ran to her little room, but while she had been away, Bruno had gone in and taken the pot of pinks, leaving a great cabbage in its place. When she saw the unlucky cabbage, Felicia was much distressed and did not know what to do, but at last she ran back to the fountain and, kneeling before the queen, said, "Madame, Bruno has stolen my pot of pinks, so I have nothing but my silver ring, but I beg you to accept it as proof of my gratitude." "But if I take your ring, my pretty shepherdess," said the queen, "you will have nothing left, and what will you do then?" "Ah, madame," she answered simply, "if I have your friendship, I shall do very well." So the queen took the ring and put it on her finger, and mounted her chariot, which was made of coral studded with emeralds and drawn by 6 milk-white horses, and Felicia looked after her until the winding of the forest path hid her from her sight, and then she went back to the cottage, thinking over all the wonderful things that had happened. The first thing she did when she reached her room was to throw the cabbage out of the window, but she was very much surprised to hear an odd little voice cry out, "Oh, I am half killed," and could not tell where it came from, because cabbages do not generally speak. As soon as it was light, Felicia, who was very unhappy about her pot of pinks, went out to look for it, and the first thing she found was the unfortunate cabbage. She gave it a push with her foot, saying, "What are you doing here, and how dared you put yourself in the place of my pot of pinks?" "If I hadn't been carried," replied the cabbage, "you may be very sure that I shouldn't have thought of going there." It made her shiver with fright to hear the cabbage talk, but he went on, "If you will be good enough to plant me by my comrades again, I can tell you where your pinks are at this moment, hidden in Bruno's bed." Felicia was in despair when she heard this, not knowing how she was to get them back. But she replanted the cabbage very kindly in his old place, and, as she finished doing it, she saw Bruno's hen, and said, catching hold of it, "Come here, horrid little creature. You shall suffer for all the unkind things my brother has done to me." "Ah, shepherdess," said the hen, "don't kill me. I am rather a gossip, and I can tell you some surprising things that you will like to hear. Don't imagine that you are the daughter of the poor laborer who brought you up. Your mother was a queen who had 6 girls already, and the king threatened that unless she had a son who could inherit his kingdom, she should have her head cut off. So when the queen had another little daughter, she was quite frightened, and agreed with her sister, who was a fairy, to exchange her for the fairy's little son. Now the queen had been shut up in a great tower by the king's orders, and when a great many days went by, and still she heard nothing from the fairy, she made her escape from the window by means of a rope ladder, taking her little baby with her. After wandering about until she was half dead with cold and fatigue, she reached this cottage. I was the laborer's wife, and was a good nurse, and the queen gave you into my charge, and told me all her misfortunes, and then died before she had time to say what was to become of you. As I never in all my life could keep a secret, I could not help telling this strange tale to my neighbors, and one day a beautiful lady came here, and I told it to her also. When I had finished, she touched me with a wand she held in her hand, and instantly I became a hen, and there was an end of my talking. I was very sad, and my husband, who was out when it happened, never knew what had become of me. After seeking me everywhere, he believed that I must have been drowned or eaten up by wild beasts in the forest. That same lady came here once more and commanded that you should be called Felicia, and left the ring and the pot of pinks to be given to you. And while she was in the house, 25 of the king's guards came to search for you, doubtless meaning to kill you, but she muttered a few words, and immediately they all turned into cabbages. It was one of them whom you threw out of your window yesterday. I don't know how it was that he could speak. I have never heard either of them say a word before, nor have I been able to do it myself until now." The princess was greatly astonished at the hen's story, and said kindly, "I am truly sorry for you, my poor nurse, and wish it was in my power to restore you to your real form. But we must not despair. It seems to me, after what you have told me, that something must be going to happen soon. Just now, however, I must go and look for my pinks, which I love better than anything in the world." Bruno had gone out into the forest, never thinking that Felicia would search in his room for the pinks, and she was delighted by his unexpected absence and thought to get them back without further trouble. But as soon as she entered the room, she saw a terrible army of rats who were guarding the straw bed, and when she attempted to approach it, they sprang at her, biting and scratching furiously. Quite terrified, she drew back, crying out, "Oh, my dear pinks, how can you stay here in such bad company?" Then she suddenly bethought herself of the pitcher of water, and, hoping that it might have some magic power, she ran to fetch it and sprinkled a few drops over the fierce-looking swarm of rats. In a moment, not a tail or a whisker was to be seen. Each one had made for his hole as fast as his legs could carry him, so that the princess could safely take her pot of pinks. She found them nearly dying for want of water, and hastily poured all that was left in the pitcher upon them. As she bent over them, enjoying their delicious scent, a soft voice that seemed to rustle among the leaves said, "Lovely Felicia, the day has come at last when I may have the happiness of telling you how even the flowers love you and rejoice in your beauty." The princess, quite overcome by the strangeness of hearing a cabbage, a hen, and a pink speak, and by the terrible sight of an army of rats, suddenly became very pale and fainted away. At this moment, in came Bruno. Working hard in the heat had not improved his temper, and when he saw that Felicia had succeeded in finding her pinks, he was so angry that he dragged her out into the garden and shut the door upon her. The fresh air soon made her open her pretty eyes, and there before her stood the Queen of the Woods, looking as charming as ever. "You have a bad brother," she said. "I saw he turned you out. Shall I punish him for it?" "Ah, no, madame," she said. "I am not angry with him. But supposing he was not your brother after all, what would you say then?" asked the Queen. "Oh, but I think he must be," said Felicia. "What?" said the Queen. "Have you not heard that you are a princess?" "I was told so a little while ago, madame, but how could I believe it without a single proof?" "Ah, dear child," said the Queen, "the way you speak assures me that, in spite of your humble upbringing, you are indeed a real princess, and I can save you from being treated in such a way again." She was interrupted at this moment by the arrival of a very handsome young man. He wore a coat of green velvet fastened with emerald clasps and had a crown of pinks on his head. He knelt upon one knee and kissed the Queen's hand. "Ah," she cried, "my pink, my dear son, what a happiness to see you restored to your natural shape by Felicia's aid," and she embraced him joyfully. Then turning to Felicia, she said, "Charming princess, I know all the hen told you, but you cannot have heard that the zephyrs to whom was entrusted the task of carrying my son to the tower where the Queen, your mother, so anxiously waited for him, left him instead in a garden of flowers, while they flew off to tell your mother, whereupon a fairy with whom I had quarreled changed him into a pink, and I could do nothing to prevent it. You can imagine how angry I was, and how I tried to find some means of undoing the mischief she had done, but there was no help for it. I could only bring Prince Pink to the place where you were being brought up, hoping that when you grow up he might love you, and by your care be restored to his natural form. And you see, everything has come right, as I hoped it would. Your giving me the silver ring was the sign that the power of the charm was nearly over, and my enemy's last chance was to frighten you with her army of rats. That she did not succeed in doing, so now, my dear Felicia, if you will be married to my son, with this silver ring, your future happiness is certain. Do you think him handsome and amiable enough to be willing to marry him?" "Madame," replied Felicia, blushing, "you overwhelm me with your kindness. I know that you are my mother's sister, and that by your art you turn the soldiers who were sent to kill me into cabbages, and my nurse into a hen, and that you do me only too much honor in proposing that I shall marry your son. How can I explain to you the cause of my hesitation? I feel, for the first time in my life, how happy it would make me to be loved. Can you indeed give me the prince's heart?" "It is yours already, lovely princess," he cried, taking her hand in his. "But for the horrible enchantment which kept me silent, I should have told you long ago how dearly I love you." This made the princess very happy, and the queen, who could not bear to see her dressed like a poor shepherdess, touched her with her wand, saying, "I wish you to be attired as befits your rank and beauty." And immediately the princess's cotton dress became a magnificent robe of silver brocade embroidered with carbuncles, and her soft dark hair was encircled by a crown of diamonds from which floated a clear white veil. With her bright eyes and the charming color in her cheeks, she was altogether such a dazzling sight that the prince could hardly bear it. "How pretty you are, Felicia," he cried. "Don't keep me in suspense. I entreat you, say that you will marry me." "Ah," said the queen, smiling, "I think she will not refuse now." Just then, Bruno, who was going back to his work, came out of the cottage and thought he must be dreaming when he saw Felicia, but she called him very kindly and begged the queen to take pity on him. "What?" she said, "when he was so unkind to you?" "Ah, madame," said the princess, "I am so happy that I should like everybody else to be happy too." The queen kissed her and said, "Well, to please you, let me see what I can do for this cross Bruno." And with a wave of her wand, she turned the poor little cottage into a splendid palace, full of treasures. Only the 2 stools and the straw bed remained just as they were, to remind him of his former poverty. Then the queen touched Bruno himself and made him gentle and polite and grateful, and he thanked her and the princess 1,000 times. Lastly, the queen restored the hen and the cabbages to their natural forms and left them all very contented. The prince and princess were married as soon as possible with great splendor and lived happily ever after. I hope you enjoyed that sweet and magical tale. Now let's slip a little deeper into this peaceful night with our next gentle sleep story. This one is called The Rain Maiden, a tale as delicate as falling rain, told to help soothe your heart, relax your body, and ease your mind. Once upon a time, there lived a shepherd and his wife, who lived in a very lonely little cottage, far from town or village, near some mountains. It was a wild neighborhood, and the wind blew across the mountains fiercely, and the rain often fell so heavily that it seemed as if the cottage would be washed away. One evening, when the shepherd was out, there came on a great storm of rain, which beat against the doors and the windows violently. As the shepherd's wife sat listening to it by the fire, it seemed to her as if it sounded louder than she had ever heard it before, and the raindrops sounded like the knock of a hand that was knocking to gain admittance. It went on for a little while, till the shepherd's wife could bear to listen to it no longer, and she rose and went to the door to open it, though she knew that she would let the wind and rain into the room. As she opened the door, a gust of rain was blown in her face, and then she saw that in the doorway stood a woman who had been knocking. She was a tall woman, wrapped in a gray cloak, with long hair falling down her back. "Thank you," she said, and though her voice was very low, the shepherd's wife could hear it plainly through all the storm. "Thank you for opening the door to me. Many would have let me stand outside. Now, may I come into your cottage and rest?" "How wet you must be," cried the shepherd's wife. "Come in and rest, and let me give you food. Have you come from far?" "No, I come from quite near," said the woman, and she came into the cottage as she spoke, and sat down in a chair near the door. "And I want no food, only a glass of water. I must go directly, but I have not far to go, and I shall be no wetter than I am now." The shepherd's wife stared in surprise, for she saw that apparently the woman's clothes were not wet at all, and what was stranger still, though she had thought she was only clad in a dull gray cloak, now she saw that she was covered with jewelry, clear stones like diamonds, with many flashing colors, and she also saw that all her clothes were of the finest. She gave her a glass of water, and begged that as well she might give her other food, but the woman shook her head and said no, water was all she needed. When she had drunk the water, she gave back the glass to the shepherd's wife and said, "And so this is your home. Have you all that you want in life? Are you happy?" "Aye, we are happy enough," said the shepherd's wife, "save indeed for one thing. 10 years ago, my little baby girl died, and I have no other children. I long for one sorely, that I might take care of it and make it happy while it is little, and then in turn, when I am old, it would love and care for me." "And if you had a little child," said the woman, rising up and standing before the shepherd's wife, "you think you would really love it better than anything in the world? Many women say that, but few do it. Before long, a little child will be born to you, and as long as you love it better than anything in the world, it will remain with you. But when you love anything else better than your little daughter and her happiness, it will go from you. So remember my words. Goodbye." And the woman walked to the door and went quietly out into the rain, and the shepherd's wife saw her disappearing, and the rain pelting around her, but her clothes were not blown about, neither did the rain seem to wet her. A year passed away, and the shepherd's wife had a tiny daughter, a lovely little baby with the bluest eyes and the softest skin. The evening she was born, the wind howled, and the rain fell as fiercely as on the night when the gray woman had come into the shepherd's cottage. The shepherd and his wife both loved their little daughter very dearly, as well they might, as no fairer child was ever seen. But as she grew older, some things about her frightened her mother, and she had some ways of which she could not cure her. She would never go near a fire, however cold she was. Neither did she love the sunshine, but always ran from it and crept into the shade. But when she heard the rain pattering against the window panes, she would cry, "Listen, mother, listen to my brothers and sisters dancing." And then she would begin to dance too in the cottage, her little feet pattering upon the boards, or, if she possibly could, she would run out onto the moor and dance, with the rain falling upon her, and her mother had much ado to get her to come back into the cottage, yet she never seemed to get very wet, nor did she catch cold. A river ran near the cottage, and by it she would go and sit for hours, dabbling her feet in the water and singing sweet little songs to herself. Still, in all other ways she was a good, affectionate girl, and did all that her mother told her, and seemed to love both her parents tenderly. And the shepherd's wife would say to herself, "My only trouble is that when she is grown up, she will want to marry and leave me, and I shall have to do without her." Time passed, and the old shepherd died, but his wife and daughter still lived on in the little cottage, and the daughter grew to be a most beautiful young maiden. Her eyes were clear light blue, like the color of the far-off sea, but it was difficult to say what was the color of her hair, save that it was very light and hung in heavy masses over her brow and shoulders. Once or twice her mother felt sorely frightened about her. It was when spring showers were falling, and the young girl had gone into the little garden in front of the cottage to let the rain fall upon her head and face, as she loved to do, in spite of all her mother could say. Then she began to dance, as she always did when the rain fell, and as she danced, the sun came out while the rain was yet falling. Her mother watched her from the cottage window, but while she watched her, it seemed to her as if her daughter was covered with jewels of every color, clear and bright. They hung around her in chains, and made her look more like a king's daughter than a shepherd's girl. "Come in, child, come in," called the shepherd's wife. And when the young girl came in the cottage, all traces of the jewels had gone. And when her mother upbraided her for going out to dance in the rain, she only answered, "It hurts no one, my mother, and it pleases me. Why should you stop me?" A little way from the cottage on the mountain side stood an old castle, where formerly the kings of the land used to come and stay, but which now had not been used for very many years. One day, however, the shepherd's wife saw great preparations were being made to beautify and adorn it, and she knew that the king and his son were coming to stay there again. Soon after they had arrived, the shepherd's daughter went down to the river, as was her wont, and sat on the bank, dipping her feet in the ripples. Presently there came up a boat, and it was a grand young man dressed all in velvet and gold, who leaned over the side to fish. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" cried the shepherd's daughter, for she was afraid of no one. "I am the king's son," said he, "and I am coming here to fish." "Who are you, and where do you come from? For I have never seen such a beautiful maiden in my life." And he looked at her, and could scarce speak, so beautiful did she seem to him. "It is cruel to take the fishes out of the water," cried the shepherd's daughter. "Leave them alone, and come and dance on the bank with me." And she went under the shade of a large tree and began to dance. And the king's son watched her, and again he thought so beautiful a maid there had never been. Day after day he came down to the river to fish, and day after day he left the line and tackle to sit and watch the shepherd's daughter, and each time found her more enchanting. Once he tried to kiss her hand, but she sprang from him and left him sitting in his boat alone. At last a day came when the prince said to his father, "My father, you want me to wed, so that I may have an heir to the throne. But there is only one woman that can ever be my wife, and that is the daughter of the poor woman who lives in the little cottage out yonder." At first, the old king was very wroth, but he loved his son well, and knew that nothing would shake him from his word. So he told him that if he would bring home his bride, he too would rejoice and love her as his daughter, even though she be a beggar maid. Then the young prince rode down to the cottage, and went in and told the shepherd's wife how he had seen her daughter, and loved her, and wished to make her his wife, so that she would be queen of the country. The shepherd's wife went nearly wild with joy. "To think that my daughter should be the queen," she said to herself. And when her daughter came into the cottage, she did not know how to contain herself, but folded her in her arms and kissed her, crying and declaring that never was a woman so blessed. "Why, what has happened, my mother, and what has pleased you so?" said her daughter, while still the shepherd's wife rejoiced and wept for joy. "It is the king's son, my girl, the king's own son, and he has just been here, and he loves you, and he will marry you and make you queen of all the land. Was there ever such luck for a poor woman?" But the daughter only said, "But I don't want to marry the king's son, mother, or anyone. I will never be the wife of any man. I will stay with you and nurse you when you are old and sick, for I can live in no house but this cottage, and have no friend but my mother." On hearing this, the shepherd's wife became very angry, and told her daughter that she must be mad, and that she must wait for a day or two, and she would be only too thankful for the love of the king's son, and for the honor he was going to do her in making her his queen. But still, the daughter shook her head and said quietly, "I will never be the wife of the king's son." The shepherd's wife did not dare tell the king's son what her daughter had said, but told him that he had better speak to her himself if he wished to make her his wife. Then, when he was again sitting in the boat on the river, and the maiden on the bank, the king's son told her how much he loved her, and that he would share with her all that he had in this world. But the shepherd's daughter only shook her head and said, "I will never live at the palace. I will never be a queen." The old king had ordered great preparations to be made for the wedding, which was to take place immediately, and all sorts of fine clothes were ordered for the shepherd's daughter, that she might appear properly as the wife of the prince. But for the few days just before the wedding, the rain fell as it had never been known to have fallen. It beat through the roofs of the cottages, and the river swelled and overflowed its banks. Everyone was frightened, save indeed the shepherd's daughter, who went out into the wet and danced as was her wont, letting the torrents fall upon her head and shoulders. The evening before the wedding day, she knelt beside her mother's side. "Dear mother," she said, "let me stop with you and nurse you when you are old. Do not send me away to the palace to live with the king's son." Then the mother was very angry, and told her daughter that she was very ungrateful, and she ought to be thankful that such luck had come in her way. And who was she, the daughter of a poor shepherd, that she should object to marrying the king's son? All night long the rain fell in torrents, and when next day the shepherd's daughter was dressed in all her finery, it was through the pools on the ground that she had to step into the grand carriage which the king had sent to fetch her. And while the marriage service was being read, the priest's voice could scarcely be heard for the pattering of the drops upon the roof. And when they went into the castle to the banquet, the water burst through the doors opened to receive them, so that the king and the wedding guests had hard ado to keep dry. It was a grand feast, and the king's son sat at one end of the table, and his young wife was beside him dressed in white and gold. All the courtiers and all the fine guests declared that surely the world had never contained such a beautiful young woman as their future queen. But just when the goblets were filled with wine, to drink to the health of the bride and bridegroom, there came a cry, "The floods! The floods!" And the servants ran into the hall, crying out that the waters were pouring in, and in one moment the rooms were filled with water, and no one thought of anything but to save themselves. When the hurricane had subsided and the waters gone down, they looked around for the prince's wife, who was nowhere to be found. Everyone said that she had been swept away by the torrents, and that she had been drowned in all her youth and beauty. Only the shepherd's wife wept alone, and remembered the words of the woman who came to her on the night of the storm. "When you love aught on earth better than your daughter and her happiness, she will go from you." The king's son mourned his wife, and for long would not be comforted. But when many years had passed, he married a beautiful princess, and with her lived very happily. Only, when the rain fell in torrents and beat against the window panes, it would seem to him as if he heard the sound of dancing feet, and a voice that called out, "Come and dance with me. Come and dance with me and my brothers and sisters, O king's son, and feel our drops upon your face." And now, as your body grows heavier and your mind begins to wander, let me share with you one final bedtime story. Let it wrap around you like a soft blanket of peace. This soothing tale called Nanina's Sheep takes us to a quiet countryside, and it explores the power of temptation and the strength it takes to resist it. Thank you for resting with me tonight. Sweet dreams, and until next time, sleep well. Once there lived a young girl named Nanina, who kept sheep for an old farmer. One day he said to her, "Nanina, I'm going away to buy pigs at a market far off, and I shall be away for 1 whole month. So be sure and take good care of the flock, and remember, there are 6 sheep and 8 lambs, and I must find them safe when I return. And mind, Nanina, that whatever you do, you don't go near the old palace on the other side of the hill, for it is filled with wicked fairies who might do you an ill turn." Nanina promised, and her master started. The first day all went well, and she drove the flock in safely at night. But the next day, she found it dull sitting on the hillside, watching the lambs at play, and wondered why her master had told her always to keep on that side and away from the old palace on the other. "If it is filled with fairies, it won't hurt me just to look at it. I should like to see a fairy." So she drove her flock to the other side of the hill and sat looking at the old palace that was half in ruins, but was said to be lit up quite brightly every night after it was dark. "I wonder if it really is lit up," said Nanina. "I should like to see." So she waited on that side of the hill till the sun went down, and then she saw a bright light appearing in one of the palace windows. As she stood and watched, the front door opened, and out there came a shepherd boy, followed by a flock of black goats. Nanina stared at him, for she had never seen anyone so beautiful before. He was dressed in glittering green, and he wore a soft brown hat trimmed with leaves. In one hand he held a crook, and in the other a pipe, and as he drew near, he began to play the pipe and dance merrily, while the goats behind him skipped and danced too. Nanina had never seen such goats. They were jet black, with locks curling and thick and soft as silk. As she listened open-mouthed to the music of the pipe, she heard it speak words in its playing. When the young birds sing, and the young plants spring, then dance we so merrily together. The shepherd boy danced lightly to where she stood, and louder sounded the pipe, and still it said, "When the young birds sing, and the young plants spring, then dance we so merrily together." Nanina gaped to see the goats dance and spring in time to the music, and so cheering it was that she felt her own feet beginning to move with it. The shepherd made her a low bow and offered her his hand, and she placed hers in it, and off they started together. Nanina's feet felt as light as if they had been made of cork, and she laughed with glee as she bounded on, and as she danced with the shepherd, so her flock began to move too, and thus they went, followed by the black goats and sheep all skipping merrily. "If my flock follow me, there can be no harm," thought Nanina, and on they kept in time to the wonderful tune. "When the young birds sing, and the young plants spring, then dance we so merrily together." Whither they went she knew not. She thought of nothing but the joy of dancing to the wonderful music. But suddenly, just at sunrise, the shepherd stopped and dropped her hand and gave one long slow note on the pipe, at which the goats gathered around him, and before she knew where they were going, they had disappeared into the palace. Then she was in a terrible fright, for she saw the sun beginning to rise, and found the whole night had passed when she thought she had only been 10 minutes. She counted her sheep, and alas, there was one lamb missing. She sought everywhere for it, but no trace of it was to be seen. Then she drove all the others back to the farm and watched them falling half asleep, for she was weary with the dancing. But when evening came and she had slept some time, she said to herself, "Surely the best plan would be to go back to the old palace and see if I can see the shepherd and the black goats again." So just about sunset, she returned to the palace, and again the door opened, and the beautiful shepherd boy came out with the black goats following. But when he began to play on his pipe and the goats to dance, Nanina forgot all about the lost lamb and danced with him as before. Again they danced till morning, and then he left her suddenly, and she found that another lamb had disappeared. Then she wept and lamented, and declared that the next night she would only watch the shepherd, and nothing would make her dance. And again the next night the same thing happened. When once she heard the pipe, Nanina could not keep still, and another lamb was lost. This went on to the end of the fortnight, when there was only one of the flock left. Then she was terribly frightened, for her master would soon return, and she did not know what she should say to him. But still she went back and sat by the old palace, and when the shepherd came out and she heard the music, she could not refrain from dancing, and in the morning the last lamb had gone. All day Nanina wandered about and cried, but no sheep were to be found. At last, when she was quite weary, she sat down beneath a beech tree near the palace and leaned her head against its trunk, sobbing. Then she saw that someone had torn down the lowest branches of the tree, and they were hanging down broken. She raised them and tied them up so that they would grow together, and as she did so, she heard a shadowy voice whisper, "Thank you, Nanina. Nanina, don't dance." She looked about, but there was nobody there, and again she heard a whisper, "Nanina, don't dance." The voice came from the beech tree, and among the leaves she saw a small twisted face looking at her. "Thank you, Nanina, for saving my bough," said the tree, "and if you mind me, you shall get all your sheep back again." "My sheep?" cried Nanina. "Only tell me, and I will do anything." "Then you must not dance. Every time you refuse to dance with the fairy, one of your flock will be returned." "But how can I refuse to dance?" cried Nanina, "for as I hear that pipe beginning, my feet begin to move of themselves. It is no use my trying." And she cried aloud. "Bury your feet in the earth, like my roots," whispered back the voice. "Dig a hole deep down, and I will hold your feet so that you shall not move them. Only you must bear the pain and not mind if you walk lame afterwards, for I shall hold them very tight and it will hurt you." "Hurt me as you please," cried Nanina, "and I shan't mind. If only I can get back my sheep, I will bear any pain." So she knelt beneath the tree and dug a deep hole in the ground among its roots, and then she placed her feet among the loose earth, and she felt something moving near them which tightened around and drew them far down into the ground and held them as if they were bound with cords. She saw the lights in the windows of the palace, and the door opened. hold me fast," she cried, "for when I hear the music I shall begin to dance." The tree said nothing, but she felt its roots tightening so that she could not move. The door of the palace opened as before, and the beautiful shepherd, followed by his goats and her sheep, came out, and she heard once more the sound of the wonderful pipe, and he danced straight up to the tree beneath which she stood and held out his hand to her. Nanina felt as if her feet were beginning to move under the earth, but the roots of the tree held them so firmly that she could not stir 1 inch. Still, the shepherd danced before her, and as she saw him springing in front, with the flocks behind him following him, she grew quite wild to dance, and tried her hardest to break her feet free from the roots which held them, but in vain, though she almost screamed with the pain they cost her. For hours the shepherd danced in front of her, till, as before, the pipe sounded forth one long note, and he disappeared. But this time, not all the flock went with him, for beside her was left one of her own little lambs, and when she saw it, she cried for joy. She felt the roots releasing their hold on her feet, and she drew them out of the earth, and they were all blue and bruised where they had been held. She drove home the lamb and fastened it into the sheep pen, but her feet were so stiff and swelled that she limped as she walked. Next night, she went back to the beech tree and again slipped her feet into the roots and felt them twist around them. But this time, the poor feet were so sore that she cried when they touched them. Again the fairy appeared, and again she heard the pipe, and her longing to dance was worse than ever, but the roots clutched her and would not let her stir. When the pipe ceased and the fairy disappeared, another of her lambs was left with her, and she drove it home as she had done the first, but she had to go very slowly on account of her crushed feet. The same thing happened the next night and the next, till all the flock had returned save one, and Nanina's feet were so bad that she could scarcely hobble, for they were crushed and bleeding, and she wondered whether she would walk lame all the days of her life. On the last evening, she limped down to the tree, almost crying with pain. When she sat down by its trunk, she heard the soft sighing voice saying, "Never mind, Nanina, tonight is the last, and though it will hurt you the most, it will soon be past." So she slipped her feet into the earth once more, though she shrank as she touched it, and directly the sun had set, the lights appeared in the palace windows, and out came the shepherd with all his black goats and her one white sheep following him. He looked more beautiful than ever, for he had a crown set with jewels and was dressed in scarlet and gold. But when the pipe began to play, it was not merry dance music it made, but long, sad notes like a funeral march. Yet Nanina's feet would have moved in spite of herself, and she would have marched in time to them, had not the roots tightened like cords and held her down. Tears of pain ran down her cheeks, and she sobbed, and instead of the joyous words, what the music said was, "Join us, Nanina, dance again. One last dance will ease your pain." Presently, the music grew quicker, and her longing to move with it grew stronger. She swayed herself about and cried and screamed as the fairy and flock danced, now solemnly and slowly, now joyously and wildly. Just when she felt that she could bear it no longer, there came one long low note on the pipe, and with a mighty crash like thunder, the shepherd and the goats disappeared. And not only had they gone, but the walls of the old palace had fallen, and nothing was left of it but a heap of stones. Beside her on the grass was the last of her lost sheep. "Goodbye, Nanina," said the voice from the beech tree. "Now you have all your flock again," and she felt the roots loosen round her feet. But when she looked at them, she found that her legs were wounded and bleeding, where she had dashed them about in trying to dance. She knelt down and smoothed over the earth where it was torn among the trees, and she put her arms round the trunk and kissed and thanked it for having helped her, but the voice did not speak again. Then she drove home the last sheep, but she had to go on her hands and knees, for her feet were too bad to walk. Next day, when the farmer came home, he was well pleased that she had kept his flock safe, but he would fain know how she had got such sore feet that for long she must walk lame. "Of a truth, master," she said, "it was in saving the lambs when they got into dangerous places." Underneath the beech tree, where Nanina's feet had bled among the earth, there sprang up pretty little scarlet flowers, and whenever she passed and saw them, she remembered how she had been punished for disobeying her master, and made up her mind never to do so again.